Oh, say-oh,
Oh, say
wave the great feather for the good of it. Oh, Octavio Paz, our wonderful Mexican poet, well, he wrote, the North American Anglo hurtles himself forward into an uninhabited future. That's the right observation. Here in Native America, we're turned around the other way. And what we are looking at where we come from, our source, our origin. And the future is in the back of us. That's the perspective that we have. Where is our source? It is the Black Hills of South Dakota. And if we can go over here, this is my standard for the red earth. Here it is portraying itself as the Black Hills of South Dakota. It is called, Paha Sapa, okay, Sapa, the Black Hills. And it is circulated around it is a red track, red earth track. And the story to go with that, as the lore has it, that is that the Creator created everything and everybody all the same. Birds, animals, humans. But somebody had the idea, somebody needs to be the chief of everybody. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's have a race. Let's have a race around the Black Hills. So that's how they assembled themselves. And of course the deer was way out front before they even got started. He went around so fast he came up behind the last animal, and that was the tortoise. So that didn't really work out very well. But the buffalo definitely was getting out there, out in front. Well, the man who was in the middle of the pack, he got together with this bird, the magpie, and he said, the magpie said, I'll make a deal with you. If you get ahead and win the race for me, you and I can sit down and have some good conversations together, because the magpie's name really means talks a lot. So that's the way it was going. And when the buffalo got near the finish line, the magpie, who had been riding on the back of the buffalo, hopped forward or flew forward and said, aha, now I have won the race for Mr. Man, so now that he's going to be the chief. So that's the way it went. But what we're saying about this story is that track was really rough. And all of these animals and everybody who was running on that very rough track, well, their feet and their paws and their hooves all got bloody sore. And that reddened the whole track. So that's the way the red track around the Black Hills, that's the way it happened. So that's, what I'm looking at here with this picture. I'm calling it a standard for the Black Hills. Right here, like this is our symbol for the Black Hills. And what it is made of here, these are actually the paha ostani, meaning the top flaps of the teepee. So you can say this is the top door of the teepee, and here is its top flaps. It's also called the pockets. It's called the pockets. It's feminine. We is feminine because the poles fit into the pocket to move the flaps. If you go over here to this piece, there I have a model teepee here, like that. And you can see this is one way to look at the construction of the teepee and the poles, and the flaps very ornate here. And up above it I have a Navajo sand painting also depicting that this is the teepee, and these are called the ears. The flaps are the ears of the of the teepee. And a piece to go with that, this land is the teepee we have always lived in. Women, like the poles that hold up the buffalo hide teepees, are holding up the earth. So that's the way that I am arranging this to see this model, the Black Hills, and the symbol of the Black Hills. Now from that, we're going to go to the buffalo, to the spirit of the buffalo. The buffalo has an ancestor that is rooted in very deep, deep prehistory. The first one that came to light in our modern time, in 1925, a cattle rancher there in Kansas, after a rainstorm, went out to check his livestock. And while he was out there, there was a flowing stream. And out of the stream bank, what looked to him at first to be a root was washing out. But on second look, he said, that looks a little bit more bony than a root. So he got off his horse and he got down and he started digging out that piece. He dug and dug and dug. And what he came out with was like something he had never seen before. It was a huge, huge buffalo skull. The horn cores themselves measured 6 feet across. Imagine. So he took that piece to the university there in Kansas, and right away they told him they knew what that was. That's this ancient buffalo. Of course, they used the word bison. It was an ancient buffalo that lived here 800,000 years ago to 200,000 years. Soon after, other specimens, I should say, were also found. So then it begins to line up as other fossils, came to light. From that early buffalo, another one came out, and this all coordinated with the change in the climates, into the Pleistocene and so forth, like that. So then another specimen came out of that. That's a little bit smaller, still with the long horns like that, and that buffalo lived here for a long time until another buffalo came out of that, and that one looks more like the buffalo we know today. So a kind of an evolution of this from the very, very long-horned buffalo to the shorter curve-horned buffalo. And for all that, let me go up here and look at this piece here. This is my painting for the spirit of a buffalo. Now the word spirit is the easiest word that have really got a lot of usage in any relations to our Native American selves or consciousness and so forth. And this piece I want to read. This is paraphrased, and it's paraphrased by Jeremy Lent here. This newly published book, The Web of Meaning. So just to show you where this piece is coming from. Yes? Okay. This is spirit, this is what we're talking about. Indigenous cultures have always believed that spirits exist for real. Not only in people, but also in trees and animals, and even in significant natural phenomena like storms. In a Native American perspective, a spirit, it might be said, is the emerging and integrative property of any natural entity. The spirit of a person or buffalo, a tree, and anything like that can be conceived as the intangible but powerful unifying principle that maintains that buffalo's natural attractor in coherent form, always in flux, variable, resilient, and has occasional transformations over time. And from that we have a spirituality that is seeking meaning in the coherent connections between things. That for me is Native America. It is all about our spirits, and that's the, sort of the Latin Anglo word that we've come to use like that, and that we seek those, traditionally. When you come down here to this picture here, if you can see it, this is a mountain that's called Bear Butte. It is adjacent, it's actually in the red formation. By the way, the red formation the geologists call the Spearfish Formation. And with that, I said geologists estimate that the Black Hills is among the oldest mountains in the North America continent. They're giving it 230 million years old. And adjacent to that, kind of riding on that formation, is this mountain. It's called Bear Butte. For millennia, Native Americans have been going up into that mountain. There's more to the mountain behind this frontal part of it for visions, that there is an inherent quality, or an indwelling quality, we should say, in Bear Butte that meets the person who goes up there seeking the visions that will govern one's life. So that is still a living reality, for us there. All of these things are to introduce that Native Americans and the buffalo have been here for a very, very long time. And that there still is, in spite of everything, a culture that continues. The invasion from Europe was not even like 300 years ago. And yet the life of Native America goes back many, many millennia and continues, for us. And that's the sort of things I'm showing here. If we go down here to this map that I've been showing, that's titled The Tribes of the Indian Nation. I really like that title. And here I've showed before, all this red area is the original, it goes up into Canada, is the original language world for the Lakota, the Dakota, and all the people that are interrelated. It is a united nation. It's called, Confederacy, the Confederacy of the Seven Council Fires, the Ochite Shakowin is the name of that confederation. Adjacent to it, this green that I showed last week is the most western part of the grasslands prairie, which also would include into the red area. And here you can see this little black circle here. This is where the Black Hills are, exactly. So you can see that it is almost in the center of Turtle Island. So now you see where the location of that is. East of there, here I've delineated here, this is the eastern border of North Dakota and South Dakota. It is the Missouri River. The Lakota name for it is Demini-Soho, meaning the Great Muddy. And in it, here, there is a being called Hogan Tonka, great whale, great fish. And it is the roiling of that creature in that river that makes it muddy. And not only that, and I put up here a figure to stand for that, Hogan Tonka. it's considered the source of the earth, at least, if not the universe. And you can see that is right in the heart of Turtle Island. And at that pulse beat of that great fish is the pulse beat of Native America. It was here about, I don't know, was it 2 or 3 years ago, that there was the attempt forcibly to put a pipeline across that river, and that put in jeopardy everything there. Somehow that pipeline has been halted, as far as I know, there. So that gives you, some idea, for that. Other things I want to show here is that here's a model of a buffalo. And what I put on the model, this is a clump of buffalo hair. And this pini, I think it's called pitehini parapa, is what it's called. Now people, they actually would take these clumps of buffalo hair and wear them on their head, put them in their hair, or even weave them into bracelets. I don't know if you can see it, but Vivian, wove, a bracelet with the buffalo hair. I've got it right there, like that. So this is, a clump of buffalo hair. I'm showing all the ways that the people had, in every way, sought to absorb, to assimilate, to integrate themselves with the buffalo. The buffalo is a being, is an animal, is a spirit that has the power of great spirituality. I can come down here, and I've shown this before. This is a stone buffalo, and plainly what a stone, that's called, inik sim. Inik sim, and if people are going to go hunting for the buffalo, they're looking for them, they're going to have this is a real one, and they're going to, sing to it, they're going to make offerings. Usually it's going to be the sweetgrass is the main incense for the buffalo. So that's a pretty important piece for seeking the buffalo. And behind it I have, this is a miniature buffalo headdress with the horns on it. That's called the isisiwum, and this is a particular feature for the Lakota nation that's called the Blackfeet, which is really the Sisapa. The Sisapa are people on the Cheyenne River. So that's something that they will definitely take with them into the buffalo hunt. So over the millennia, who knows, hundreds of thousands of years, these people had learned and devised all kinds of ways, sympathetic magic or what have you, to get themselves together with the buffalo. Well, the prairie grasslands, of course, is the main place for buffalo, but there were also buffalo in the mountains, in the woods, and they are slightly different. I think it was around in the early 60s, I was with my Cherokee teacher, and from which I learned, up in Canada, a small group of woodland buffalo were discovered. I think it was about 200 of them. And the Canadian government, took them into custody to, protect them and save them and keep that purity going. So, slight variations, in the buffalo species. But we have all of this relation, with the buffalo. And over here, let me show you this. This is a buffalo rawhide rattle. There's the buffalo fur and the shape of it. Certain songs, if not require, definitely enjoy being sung with a rawhide rattle, and this one is as a buffalo hide like that. I have another one here, and this one is interesting because you see the long horns, would indicate that this is the ancestor buffalo like that. in Cherokee, the name for the buffalo is Yanasa, Yanasa, you know. Yo ho, hey hey, ho ho yes, hey hey, yo ho, hey hey, yo ho yes, hey hey. So we feel that the buffalo is the direct, all-present relative who never dies, who is embodied in the eyes, flesh, and bone. And the personal sense of having eyes, flesh, and bone, that the sense of me and the sense of being with buffalo is all the same. So in that we find that the body of the buffalo is the body of our mutuality. And that's what we're presenting here. You come over here, these pieces that I have, this is a rawhide shield that is made in the shape of the buffalo's hoof. And in it, what's featured is the trap, oye, oye. And it's meaning, you know, to, when you see my track, the thought you will have will be in the form of the buffalo. So this is a medicine piece. And the red and white stripes, you know, designate in this culture that this is sacred. Up here, this is a buffalo horn. The size, I mean the smallness and the curve of it, says that this buffalo is about 2 years old. So this is a 2-year-old buffalo, and I put it together with this feather, so that this feather is saying the horn gives the power of intent to the feather, and the intention of the feather is toward the ideal of good. Over here, you see this? This is made of the buffalo toes, and it's covered with red earth to, you know, relate it to, you know, the red earth of the Black Hills. Let's see what that sounds like there. And over here, this is the tail of the buffalo, and it's used, you know, to, you know, do benedictions, you know, like that, you know, like that. And it's also used. Here's another buffalo horn. I would need a bigger one, but it's filled with water to dip the tail in as an to asperse, you know, on an altar or whatever you want to sprinkle like holy water on. So that's what these two things are together. A little bit in the sense of the language, the earth, the world of the earth, Maha, for the people, is through feeling. Through all the feelings, sentiments, emotions, all of these things is within the word Shanti. Shanti. However, what happened when the Europeans came in and their Christian agents, referred to as missionaries, and infiltrating the people, forced assimilation schools, all this kind of thing. These missionaries then also produced, they produced pseudo-dictionaries. These pseudo-dictionaries, these are not particularly educated or learned individuals. So they're listening to the language of people and phonetically, you know, writing it down like that, and then making for their understanding equations. So they started to put something else into the native languages like that. Their interest was not in the language, their interest is in evangelism. And so they made up these equations, is what I'm calling it. Something like tapuskanska, meaning in our language, the power of all that moves. Well, they equated that with Great Spirit. And then they made that Great Spirit is Mr. J, G-O-D, you know who that is, you know. So then that way they began to change into the sense of feeling into people in that way. Chanchi Ga is the full sense for feelings, emotions, affections, sentiment, and then verbs attached, you know, to that, you know, like that, to express that. After the entry of the missionaries like that, that lost that sense and became instead words conjoined with thinking, with reason. And the result of that was that that people do not know where their heart was. That was what their feeling was about. Begin to lose their senses through feeling. So it's very interesting, you know, in terms of language. It would take a very skilled, you know, lexiconographer to be able to go into these usage words and separate them, you know, take off the opacity, because the opacity is like a spot in a structure that's otherwise clear and transparent. And that's really, really what's needed. And only, as far as I'm experiencing, educated people are able to manage that at this time. Now I'm getting a postscript here. This is just, you know, fresh off Indian Country Today. It's about the land called Wounded Knee. And the land of Wounded Knee, if people are not acquainted with it, was in 1890 the United States Army soldiers, 7th Cavalry, surrounded Spotted Elk's band on the place called Wounded Knee. It's a creek, a river. Surrounded them, disarmed them, and then shot them with machine guns and howitzers. And what this article is about buying back that land specifically, because now it's available to do that in order to have, you know, like a shrine for that. And this is, you know, mainly under the Oglala Lakota people and also the people of the Cheyenne River. So I'm kind of going to, you know, read a little bit of this. Wounded Knee land comes home at last. It was the last resolution of the day, but it was a stunner. The Oglala Nation Tribal Council voted in a historic decision on, was only just September 7th, to purchase these 40 acres of Wounded Knee land from the owner, Jeanette Siewinski, for $500,000. A move that now puts almost all of Wounded Knee National Historic Landmark under the ownership of the Oglala Nation. And it also sold for far less than the $3.9 million demanded by her now deceased husband. The land now includes a covenant to preserve it as a sacred site and a memorial without any commercial development. Our tribes have come together through war and times of need. It's our relatives who are buried there at Wounded Knee land. Many of those massacred at Wounded Knee were from the Minnekopu band on the Cheyenne River. When I heard about it, I said, we have to buy it. Let's buy it. That's our ancestors' resting place. We need to respect them. The Oglala officials said Friday that the 40-acre parcel includes area where most of the carnage of the massacre took place, including the hill where the soldiers used cannons to shoot people, the ravine where victims fled, and the area that had been an old trading post was located. That, that was a modern trading post. The agreement ends a decades-long dispute over the land that is the site of the historic Wounded Knee massacre of 1890, where hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children were killed by U.S. soldiers of the 7th Cavalry using machine guns in an attempt to suppress the spirit dance, a Lakota religious movement. Victims were buried in a mass grave in a nearby Catholic cemetery. Shades of Russia and Ukraine. The American Indian movement, known as AIM, very active, in the 70s, definitely made a stand there. We had a bloody standoff between the federal forces and the AIM members of South Dakota. This property, which includes a portion of the Wounded Knee landmark, has become a potent, painful reminder of the brutal federal violence used to suppress indigenous Native Americans. The issue of the Wounded Knee ownership became a national symbol of a century of unscrupulous treatment of Native American people by the United States government and its citizens. For a time, the owner toyed with the idea of building a motel and a gas station on the site, and he put it up for $3.9 million. Interesting. Tim Iago, who was the founder of Indian Country Day, also was working on some way to meet that. And curiously, he didn't get to see this because he passed away just this last month in July. But, very timely. Also, the Red Cloud Indian School recently returned about 1 acre of the land. It's where the Sacred Heart Church once stood. Red Cloud Indian School has also had art shows featuring, my art there. At the last paragraph, the story has been updated to include a comment from the Oglala Nation clarifying that the 40-acre site being purchased does not include the entirety of the Wounded Knee site, though it does include the area where the carnage occurred. And just coincidentally, so the Union Tribune won't be left out. So here's an article on that very thing that I've just read you about, where the picture is not identified, but there are grave crosses on it and so forth, like that. So it's good that at least, the subscribers to the newspaper know something about this, although the article itself is very tame. Still, much of the public and these writers still live with the impression of a patternistic colonial mentality towards Native Americans. Part of that has to do with Crazy Horse. It's an Oglala Sioux war chief here. And in this book, it is the detailed narration of the descendants, his family, to the author here, about him and about what happened there. So I show this book for anybody who wants to look it up and get a true Native American narrative instead of all of the propaganda that comes through the dominant culture about what took place here. And I have one thing to go with that, and that is his picture right here. This is the only photograph that happened to be taken of Crazy Horse, because like a lot of people, they really thought that they might lose some of their spirit captured into that camera. And what I have here with my picture, this is to represent that he wore this. This is a like a medicine piece for being in war, that he wore this white stone with a hole in it. So that's why I have it here. So this is Crazy Horse. Actually, it's the name of his horse and not him. And the name that's implied in it also is a mythical name. And up here, I include this to say this is the white buffalo, because all of this is now under the auspices of the white buffalo constellation. Now I have one poem here. I read one a few weeks ago. The Drum That Beats Within Us by Mike Bond. There's a buffalo on the cover. And this seems very apt, for my theme here. It's actually titled Children Scalped. Children scalped, women shot through the breast. We ran frantically, hands raised against hot, speeding metal. Blood, wind, pain, and dust is all we remember. Cheyenne, Arapaho, Minneconjou, Algonquin, Comanche, Kiowa, Ute, Mi'kmaq, Paiute, Sioux, Delaware, Apache, Blackfoot. Name us all, hundreds of tribes, thousands of clans, many millions of lives. Once the earth was round and full, and the buffalo grass tasted sweet and grew high in warm summer rains. We could walk forever toward sunset or sunrise. Clean air, no fences, no roads, skies thick with birds, clear rivers and streams, prairies alive with animals of every kind. And evil, a dream from somewhere in the future.